First, as a society, we are already dreadful at studying and discussing history. As I recently stated, understanding and appreciating history is not just informative, but instructive, because failing to learn from history greatly increases the likelihood of repeating bad events or actions or policies. Hello again. Welcome to The Ruthless Truth. I'm your host, Truth Davis. In this forum, I share opinions, thoughts, truths on a wide variety of topics based on what I believe to be a unique life experience. And you can read more about that in the bio or in the notes. My intent is to share stories and experiences and hopefully provide some life and career lessons that will help you on your life journey. Please follow me on Instagram at TruthDavis5, subscribe to the YouTube channel Ruthless Truth, and there's also a Facebook page, Ruthless Truth. General format, I'll share some initial commentary on current news or just my thoughts. Then I'll have a deeper discussion on one topic, which will be today's truth. And then I like to end with an American history fun fact. Okay. You know, one of the most interesting aspects of being a podcaster or influencer is you never know what to expect. You know, sometimes I'll post something and then prepare myself for a wave of negative reactions that never come. And then other times I'll say or post something that I think is fairly tame and straightforward and then be overwhelmed by comments. Well, that's what happened last week. In the previous episode's American History Fun Fact, I reviewed the history of the Statue of Liberty, specifically noting that it was originally intended and designed to commemorate the end of American slavery. Oh my God. Apparently, this really shook the sensibilities of a lot of people, many of whom accused me of trying to rewrite history and make everything about slavery. And the crazy thing about it is, I wasn't expressing an opinion, just stating a fact, and a very easy one to fact check. I replied to one comment with, just Google, why does the Statue of Liberty have chains on her feet? Then get back to me. Crickets. But what most surprised me was how quick people were to dispute and reject my statements just because they didn't like it. I mean, a 2-minute Google search would have provided accurate information. I guess it was more satisfying to accuse me of wokeness and revisionist history than to take the time to become more informed. But as I thought more about it, I realized, this is just a symptom of a broader movement being propagated by the current administration. Earlier this year, the White House began taking action to have national exhibits that reference slavery or racial injustice altered or removed. The White House said these references were, quote, divisive and un-American, and that we need to promote a more patriotic narrative. They said, we don't want to make white children feel bad or guilty about their history. Well, fortunately, just this week, a Bush-appointed federal judge ordered the Trump administration to immediately restore exhibits about enslaved people at Philadelphia's President's House site, declaring that their removal was unlawful. Still, this is an alarming and frightening thing to me. First, as a society, we are already dreadful at studying and discussing history. As I recently stated, understanding and appreciating history is not just informative, but instructive, because failing to learn from history greatly increases the likelihood of repeating bad events or actions or policies. I mean, the most glaring current example is tariffs. A recent objective analysis revealed that Americans are paying 90% of the cost of tariffs. If we had better studied the 1930s, we could have predicted this and avoided it. But the more concerning aspect of all this is avoiding or masking the truth, just so we can feel better about ourselves as a nation. Have we become that thin-skinned? I mean, I may be wrong, but I'm fairly certain there's no one alive today who owned slaves in America. So why would anyone get defensive about it? That said, there are still people alive who resisted the civil rights movement in the 1960s. As a reminder, Ruby Bridges is only 71 years old. So I guess for some, history is still a bit too recent or close for comfort. But history is not something to be feared. And it's ironic to me because there are still large groups and annual events celebrating the Confederate States of America. And at the same time the administration is trying to erase Black history, the vice president has been very vocal and adamant about reinstating the names of Confederate military leaders as the names of current U.S. military bases, such as Fort Bragg, Fort Benning, and Fort Hood, just to name a few. You can't have it both ways. To be better citizens, we all need to embrace our collective history in this country, including the good, the bad, the tragic, and the atrocities. Now I must confess, the military base names, it doesn't really bother me at all. Because, again, it happened. It's history. So removing the names doesn't change American history any more than removing references to slavery. Now, I know the news can be boring and depressing, but we all need to pay attention to some current trends, specifically related to the upcoming midterm elections. Both sides are looking for advantages, whether it be redistricting or new voter eligibility requirements. Now, you may not yet realize it, but our leaders in Washington are well aware of the importance of the elections in November. As evidence, last week, the House of Representatives passed the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, known as the SAVE Act. The stated purpose is to ensure our elections are safe and free of fraud. It's a big effort to address a problem that no one has been able to prove even exists. There is no evidence anywhere in the country that confirms significant or pervasive voter fraud. But what the bill does do is implement additional barriers to voter eligibility, thus suppressing voters. You know, most states already require proof of identity to vote. This bill will also require proof of citizenship by presenting either a birth certificate or passport. Okay, first, less than 50% of Americans have a valid passport, and many people don't have a copy of their birth certificate. I mean, it could be in a drawer somewhere at their parents' house. And additionally, married women may encounter issues if their married name differs from the name on their birth certificate, which is often the case. If signed into law, the bill disproportionately affects minorities, women, and lower income Americans. Now, encouragingly, the SAVE Acts will face strong opposition in the U.S. Senate. But still, even if it fails, you can expect subsequent attempts to restrict voter eligibility and registration. And historically, lower voter turnout favors the Republican Party. Okay, let's get to today's truth. Today's truth. Okay, over the past week, Grammy-nominated rapper Glorilla has been a hot news topic. Glorilla, whose real name is Gloria Hallelujah Woods, is from Memphis and actually attended high school in my childhood neighborhood of Orange Mound. Well, over the past weekend, she competed in the NBA Celebrity All-Star Game. But that's not the reason for the extensive social media coverage. No. Glo, who is one of 10 children in her family, has been verbally attacked by her sister, Victoria, who has accused Glorilla of neglecting her family and not providing any financial assistance to her parents or siblings. Now, frankly, I was disappointed that Victoria, who goes by the name Scarface, received so much media attention. She says she daily checks the net worth of her famous sister and has been demanding that Glorilla pay her. Now, in response, Glo has posted past screenshots from her parents and siblings who had thanked her profusely for her generosity to them. I found this entire affair to be distasteful, and it is the inspiration for today's truth. So, in today's truth, I implore you, I beseech you, don't go broke trying to take care of your family. Now, this is a common occurrence. There are many celebrities who lost their fortunes because they gave so much money to their friends and family. And I understand it, especially for those who came from modest means and suddenly find themselves wealthy. They're constantly being asked for financial help or loans, and it's hard to say no, okay? And even for non-celebrities, just everyday folks who have been successful in life and money, family and friends often ask for money. But the message I want to deliver today is that your first responsibility is to yourself. So I will briefly outline and address 3 situations you must avoid and resist so that you don't go broke taking care of others. Okay, number 1, cash loans and gifts. This is by far the most common and frequent situation. A relative or friend reaches out and asks for a few hundred or a few $1,000s. And why do they feel so comfortable asking for money? Well, I think Oprah said it best a few years ago when she said, quote, "People ask for money based on what they think you have." Also, even if they call it a loan, don't assume it'll ever be paid back, because many times they will assume you don't need it or you won't miss it. And even if that's true, that's no reason to just give your money away. Now, look, I'm not saying you should never help anybody out, but just make sure you're doing it out of a genuine desire to help and not because you feel obligated or guilty. Again, quoting Oprah, "No one is going to make me feel guilty for my success." And if you do say no, be prepared for the guilt tripping. You may be called selfish or insensitive for not giving them money that they believe you have. Don't fall for it. You were the one that had a plan, made sacrifices, took risk, and managed your money responsibly. Others had the same opportunity as you. Don't let them make you feel responsible for their shortcomings. It's not your job. It's not your problem. Okay. Number 2 risk for going broke, helping others. And this is a tough one. Okay. Don't use your retirement savings to pay for your children's college education. Now, I said this is a tough one because nearly all parents want to help their children if they can. And many parents believe it's their responsibility to pay college tuition and other education-related expenses. That's fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with wanting to help your children attend college. And if parents have prepared for this via college saving plans like a 529 or other savings activities, that's great. My only point is, don't jeopardize your own future for the sake of your kids. And here's why. First, you can't borrow for retirement, but your kids can borrow for school. Any money you take out of your retirement account is money that is no longer invested and growing for you. The most important factor in building a retirement nest egg is the compound interest and gains of invested dollars. So taking a loan not only reduces your account balance, but you miss out on growth potential of those dollars. Conversely, your kids have the option to take out student loans that they will have years, if not decades, to pay off. And then a second reason, your kids may have many more economical options for attending college. While it may be preferable, not everyone can afford to pay for a 4-year private education. But there are other options. Your kids could attend a state school, or they could attend part-time and work part-time to help pay tuition. Another very good option is to attend community college for the first 2 years, then transfer to a 4-year college for the last 2 years. Most people know that Barack Obama received his college degree from Columbia University, a well-respected Ivy League institution. But what most people don't know is that he first attended Occidental College in Los Angeles on a full scholarship, then transferred to Columbia after his sophomore year. So people only remember where you finished, not where you started. Last week, I spoke to an association of retirees, and I had two key messages for them. Number one, enjoy your retirement. You worked hard and saved responsibly. Now it's time to live life. Get comfortable spending your money. And then my second point, be selfish in your retirement. Don't let family members drain your retirement accounts by asking you for help. And don't feel guilty about saying no. Okay, my third and final situation to resist when it comes to protecting your money. Don't feel obligated to give your children a big, expensive wedding. The average wedding now costs about $30,000. That's a lot of money for just one day with no residual financial assets. And here's a statistical fun fact for you. The more money spent on the wedding, the more likely the marriage will end in divorce. Why? Because of misplaced priorities. Planning a big wedding consumes a lot of time and energy focused on one event, one day, as opposed to expending that energy discussing and planning how are you going to happily live together in all the years following that one special day. Again, if you have the money and can afford it, fine, but don't go into debt or compromise your own financial future to help finance a wedding. In my humble opinion, weddings are way overrated anyway. And here's a potential alternative. Tell your kids, instead of paying for the wedding, you'll make a deposit in their investment account to help them get started on their financial future. This may prove to be more satisfying for all involved. Okay, so a quick summary. Don't you dare go broke because you spend so much money trying to help family and friends. First, don't let anyone make you feel guilty for your financial success or accomplishments. You have no obligation or responsibility to take care of anyone but yourself and your immediate family. Second, takers will keep taking until you stop giving. They don't think of the effect on you because they assume you're fine. And finally, don't use your retirement savings to help fund your kids' college educational wedding. Of course, it's fine to want to help, and by all means, do what you can. Just not to the point that you compromise your own financial future. Okay, let's get to today's American History Fun Fact. Today's American History Fun Fact. In a previous podcast, I asked if Black History Month was helping. Well, I believe Black history is American history. And if you're going to tell American history, it needs to include Black history, Asian American history, Native American, and Hispanic history. Because otherwise, the history is incomplete. I include American history in every podcast episode, and I don't need to wait until February to feature a Black figure or story. That said, in today's American History Fun Fact, I want to tell the fascinating story of Walter White, who led the NAACP from 1929 to 1955. Okay. Walter Francis White was born July 1st, 1893 in Atlanta, Georgia, to educated parents who were both graduates of Atlanta University. Walter was of mixed race heritage and had fair skin, blonde hair, and blue eyes. His Eurocentric appearance would serve him well later in his career. Like his parents, Walter graduated from Atlanta University in 1916. Personal side note, I myself also graduated from Atlanta University just prior to its merger with Clark College, which formed the current Clark Atlanta University. My class was the last graduating class to receive degrees that read Atlanta University. Okay, back to Walter White. So after college graduation, he began working at Standard Life Insurance, a successful black-owned business in Atlanta. Later, at the invitation of activist and writer James Weldon Johnson, 25-year-old Walter White moved to New York City. In 1918, he started working at the national headquarters of the NAACP. White became an undercover agent in investigating lynchings in the South, which were peaking. With his keen investigative skills and light complexion, White proved to be the NAACP's secret weapon against white mob violence. Through 1927, Walter White would personally investigate 41 lynchings and 8 race riots, risking his life repeatedly. At one point, he almost joined the Ku Klux Klan. Via a friend's connection, White befriended Edward Clark, who was a leader in the KKK. Clark invited White to Atlanta to meet with Klan leaders, but Walter declined, fearing that his true identity could be revealed. Still, White used his connection to Klan leaders to further his investigation into sinister Klan activities. However, Klan leaders began looking deeper into his background, and then Walter began receiving anonymous death threats on his or threats on his life, although he had already turned over all of his information to the U.S. Department of Justice. Now, the biggest risk to his life was related to the Tulsa race massacre, where Black Wall Street was burned to the ground in 1921. White was granted press credentials from the Chicago Daily News via a recommendation from the governor of Arkansas, who obviously did not know Walter White's true identity. So White covered the massacre and wrote a firsthand account that was later published in the Daily News and other papers. Now, while covering the riot, White learned that his identity had been discovered. So he quickly boarded a train back to Arkansas. And the conductor told him as he boarded that he was leaving, quote, just when the fun's going to start, because they had found out there was a damned yellow nigger down here passing for white, and the boys are going to get him. And so when asked what they would do to him, the conductor told White, well, when they get through with him, he won't pass for white no more. Walter White eventually succeeded James Weldon Johnson as the head of the NAACP in an acting capacity in 1929, taking over officially in 1931, and led the organization until his death in 1955. During his tenure, he worked with President Truman on desegregating the armed forces after World War II. He also led the development of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, which conducted several legal challenges to segregation and achieved many successes, most notably the Supreme Court case of Brown versus Board of Education in 1954 that led to the court-ordered desegregation of public schools. Also during his tenure, the NAACP membership quintupled to 500,000 members. Now, I guess any telling of Walter White's story would be incomplete without mentioning his personal life. In 1949, he divorced his wife of 27 years and then married a divorced white South African woman. Now, many of his colleagues were greatly offended, and some accused White of always wanting to be white, while others went further, saying he actually was white. His children disowned him to the point that his son changed his name so as to totally distance himself from his father. But despite the messiness of his private life, there's no denying the legacy of Walter White. He was an effective and successful investigator of racial injustices and violence and propelled the NAACP to national prominence. Walter White died of a heart attack in 1955 at the age of 61. Okay, that's all I have for you today on The Ruthless Truth. Thank you so much for listening. Again, follow me on Instagram at TruthDavis5. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Ruthless Truth. There's also a Facebook page, Ruthless Truth. Thanks again, and I will talk to all of you soon.